The assembled press were anticipating some big development, given this is a critical moment in the Gaza peace process. But even by his norm-busting standards, what Donald Trump said next left the room and the world agog.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area.
Journalists looked shocked in disbelief that Donald Trump, the sworn America First, non-interventionist president, was proposing that the U.S. seize control of Gaza, own it and develop it was nothing short of astounding.
You are talking tonight about the United States taking over a sovereign territory. What authority would allow you to do that? Are you talking about a permanent occupation there?
I do see a long-term ownership position, and I see it bringing great stability to that part of the Middle East and maybe the entire Middle East. Everybody I've spoken to loves the idea of the United States owning that piece of land, developing and creating thousands of jobs with something that will be magnificent in a really magnificent area that nobody would know. Nobody can look because all they see is death and destruction and rubble. And
as Prime Minister Netanyahu stood smiling, the president framed his Gaza takeover as a humanitarian rescue for Gazans, a release from the never-ending death and destruction. Never mind that the forced displacement of people is a violation of international law that many believe would be tantamount to a form of ethnic cleansing. But the real estate developer-in-chief saw only a rosy future for all.
I've studied this very closely over a lot of months. And I don't want to be cute, I don't want to be a wise guy, but the Riviera of the Middle East, this could be something that could be so bad, this could be so magnificent.
Earlier in the day, the president had made another announcement that was stunning in itself, a prelude in retrospect to his evening bombshell.
If we can get a beautiful area to resettle people permanently in nice homes and where they can be happy and not be shot, not be killed, not be knifed to death like what's happening in Gaza.
Trump was proposing that nearly 2 million people be expelled from Gaza ahead of the US and potentially its military moving in. But who would take them? He wasn't clear.
I think Jordan and Egypt will. I know they've spoken about it with you, and they say they're not going to accept. I say they will. But I think other countries will accept also.
But both Egypt and Jordan rejected Trump's plan outright, while Saudi Arabia, a key US ally in the region, reaffirmed its unequivocal rejection of any infringement on the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people or attempts to displace them from their land. This unwavering position is non-negotiable. Today, some Republicans in Congress attempted to put a positive spin on Trump's plan, while others didn't even bother.
Look, I think ultimately what we want is what's best for the people of Gaza. We want them to have an opportunity where they can prosper and be safe. And so obviously we'll continue to engage in conversations about that and how you keep the people of Israel safe as well.
But were you shocked by President Trump's announcement?
We'll continue to be
that now American foreign policy?
To the entire area. We'll continue to be committed.
Senator, can we have a reaction to Donald Trump's proposal on Gaza?
I already talked about a kink in the slinky.
We have a quick reaction to Donald Trump's announcement on Gaza.
Yeah, I think there's problematic. I think American troops being involved in that area seldom works that well.
Well, the president has certainly been thinking outside the box.
Is there even a box in this case?
Right.
Do you even take his proposal seriously?
You have to take him seriously.
Oh, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's not who we are as a nation to be looking at displacing people from their land and taking it over.
Is that now American foreign policy?
No, and it's nonsense.
But it is what the President of the United States, today welcoming his new Attorney General, just proposed. The most radical intervention in the Middle East since the invasions of Iraq and Afghanistan that could upend the fragile peace process in Gaza just as it was about to enter its critical second phase.
Can we ask about your Gaza proposal? A lot of people are talking about, obviously, got a lot of attention.
Everybody loves it, but this is just not the right time. But we'll maybe.
Whatever his thinking, he declined to comment today. Perhaps because he doesn't know the answers. He's still filling in the blanks himself. Policy on the fly. It wouldn't be the first time. Well, everyone in DC is still trying to digest exactly what happened here last night. You heard the shock reaction up on the hill there behind me in my piece today. I was actually in the room in the White House last night, and I can tell you that jaws dropped when Donald Trump made his big announcement. Was it off the cuff? Was it a negotiating tactic? Who knows? He was reading it off the teleprompter, so certainly some pre-thought had gone into it. So many questions left. Trump would not answer any of those himself today, but his press secretary did make some comments. She stressed that what Donald Trump had said was coming from his humanitarian heart, she said. And she was asked at one point if he was prepared to remove Palestinians from Gaza by force. She wouldn't answer that. She simply said that he was prepared to rebuild Gaza. She was pressed again. Was Donald Trump prepared to put American boots on the ground? I am saying that the president has not committed to that yet, she said. He has committed, though, not to use American funds for the rebuild. She doesn't say where the money would come from. She said that he had spoken today to the leaders of Egypt, of Bahrain, of Saudi Arabia. She didn't tell us what they had said. And she also mentioned that he would be hosting here next week in Washington, D.C., the King of Jordan. Now, that will be a momentous day, as today is a momentous day, as every day is, frankly, a momentous day here in Washington, D.C.
Certainly is. Thanks, Siobhan. Now, President Trump's proposal was met with swift rejection from Arab leaders across the Middle East. Saudi Arabia put out a statement just minutes after his press conference, finished reiterating their absolute commitment to a Palestinian state. US allies across Europe and beyond have insisted that Palestinians have a right to self-determination. While in Gaza, there was outrage from people who have endured 15 months of hell. Here's our Foreign Affairs correspondent, Sikandar Kimani.
In Gaza's ruins, no one is under any illusion about how difficult it will be to rebuild their lives. But many here are descendants of refugees from the war surrounding the birth of Israel, as Palestinians call it, the Nakba, or catastrophe. And for them, this rubble, all 50 million tons of it, is still home.
Trump's remarks are illogical. We have lived through war for a year and 4 months, and then he comes and says we should leave our land. This is our ancestors' land. We will not leave it.
But Trump officials think they know best, insisting Gazans' lives would be vastly better elsewhere.
A better life is about a better opportunity, better financial conditions, better aspirations for you and your family. That doesn't occur because you get to pitch a tent in the Gaza Strip.
In Israel, politicians from the ruling right-wing coalition were overjoyed. The long-vaunted two-state solution seemingly no longer American policy.
Well, it was amazing what we saw yesterday. I mean, Donald Trump in Washington, in fact, show us how you can draw a new Middle East, but this time a realistic Middle East. Not those dreams, I mean, this Alice or Arafat in Wonderland that we had for 3 or 4 decades, I mean, in which you could think that you would bring back terrorists to the region.
But it's the idea of somehow clearing out 2 million people, derided as ethnic cleansing by human rights groups, that seems fantastical. It's vehemently opposed, even by America's allies in Europe and the UK.
They must be allowed home. They must be allowed to rebuild, and we should be with them in that rebuild on the way to a two-state solution.
They said it couldn't be done, but President Trump did it.
It isn't the first time Trump has unveiled a vision for the future of the Middle East. He brokered the Abraham Accords in his first term. The UAE and Bahrain agreeing to normalize relations with Israel, they said, to prevent Israeli annexation of the West Bank. In Israel today, Trump posters on the side of the road. He now wants to oversee a deal between Israel and Saudi Arabia, historic heart of the Muslim world. Could this announcement on Gaza be part of a negotiation strategy.
People in the region and in the kingdom know that Trump has this capacity to make sometimes outrageous statements, and that won't go very far. The Saudi Ministry of Foreign Affairs issued a very strong statement where it said that it continues to insist on a two-state solution as a precursor to normalization, and that it is against any transfer of the population out of Gaza.
Today, both Egyptian and Jordanian officials met leaders from the Palestinian Authority, both again rejecting any suggestion they would take displaced Palestinians. And Hamas, still the dominant force in Gaza, dismissed Trump's proposals as absurd and ridiculous. Negotiations on extending the current ceasefire and hostage release deal into a second phase are now starting, but in the shadow of Trump's words, which everyone is still trying to make sense of.
Well, just before we came on air, I spoke to the Palestinian ambassador, Hussam Zomlot, and asked him if he's taking the Trump plan seriously.
Of course, you do too. Everybody should take this seriously, because this is no longer about Palestine. We, the Palestinian people, are used to this. We've been subjected to a war of extermination for 100 years. We resisted, we existed, we remained, and here we are.
But do you think that is now American policy?
It's failed. So apparently it has found some purchase. The Zionist idea of cleansing Palestine is finding some purchase. So it's a huge reason and call for concern and action. It has to do with our international order.
Are you relieved then that the rest of the world, almost, without exception, has already said, no, we still believe in two-state solution and Palestinians must resettle in their homeland?
Of course, that's a source of support and empowerment, that it is that position that is isolated, and our position is being supported by the vast majority of the world, particularly the region.
So what do you say? I mean, the US envoy, Mr. Witkoff, has said a better life is not necessarily tied to a physical space.
That's none of his business. It's as simple as that. Maybe he would accept that many Americans would be called to leave their homes. What is this logic? This is sick. The Palestinian people are not illegal immigrants. Even illegal immigrants in the US have rights. This is our home, and we ain't going anywhere.
I mean, some people think this is a bit of a distraction policy, that there is something else going on, perhaps around the annexation of the West Bank.
Yes.
And that's what's really about to happen.
Yes, perhaps. And he said that for weeks, and we'll announce our new policy on the West Bank. So you might be right that this is tactical, it's a diversion, it's a distraction. Still, it is very dangerous. The whole logic of mass expulsion, of ethnic cleansing, today, in this age and time, unthinkable. So we expect the international community to actually unite at this point in time and fend off this. Otherwise, believe you me, everybody is watching. What comes next will not be Palestine.
But it's clear that the logic of
Gaza
this...
was the last of a barrage of claims. He wants to take over Canada, Panama, Greenland, and what have you. So this is not a joke. It's not a joke.
The logic from the Trump position is, well, this is going to take, a decade or more to rebuild. And the rebuilding is the thing that Israel effectively has a stranglehold on. If Gaza is not able to rebuild and life is completely unsustainable there, which they can make it, I mean, what can you or the outside world do about it?
We just need to remove that Israeli stranglehold. That's what we need to remove. We remove the root cause of all this. We have to exert the pressure that is needed. Israel is not a fact of life. Israel also is subjected to pressure and functions under pressure, and go back to history. The problem is, we have never really, and this brings me to the main point, the international community has left this to fester until we get Netanyahu and Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, who believe in the full erasure of Palestine, and they go to Washington and they find purchase. So now is the time when we think again, and how do we, as an international community, actually take the situation out of this complete off-a-cliff scenario into a track whereby Gaza is rebuilt, Gaza is united with the West Bank, a state of Palestine is established, the occupation ends.
Do you think this jeopardizes the next phase of the ceasefire?
It could, and hopefully it will not, because that would be the catastrophic scenario. That would be the worst of all scenarios. I mean, to go back to the time of genocide, the mass murder and the mass destruction is, we should never go back there. Time is for action. That's why this is the moment for the UK to recognize the state of Palestine. This is the time for the UK to take a leading position in the international community to implement the two-state solution. This is the time to empower peace and to become peacemakers, no matter what side shows and what big statements are made anywhere.
Ambassador, thank you very much. Well, joining me now is Fleur Hassan Nahum, the Special Envoy for the Israeli Foreign Minister. She joins me from Jerusalem, where she served as Deputy Mayor. Let's begin with that last point. Egypt is warning that this could jeopardize the next phase of the ceasefire. If that happens, it's a massive miscalculation, isn't it?
Well, we don't know that. It might even pressure Hamas to implement the next stage of the ceasefire. You can't know at this point. But what's really interesting is why Egypt, that borders Gaza, did nothing throughout the whole entire war to actually take in any women or children or refugees, take people out of harm's way in a war that we didn't start, that started with a massacre on October 7th. And it's interesting that Zomlot's talking about ethnic cleansing, but the only people who have ethnic cleansing in their charter are Hamas.
But do you accept that the forced displacement of Palestinians from Gaza would be ethnic cleansing and would be illegal?
Well, who's talking about forced? Have you asked the Gazans? In fact, if you asked the majority of Gazans, and let me just give you some numbers, 10 years before October 7th, 250,000 Gazans left Gaza when it was very difficult to leave Gaza. During the war, the ones who had some money smuggled their way into Egypt, and there's about 100,000 Gazans in Egypt.
Well, there's lots of them today refusing to go. And so even if some wanted to go, you know that most of them, or a lot of them, wouldn't go.
Well, we don't know that.
So are you saying you would forcibly displace them?
What I'm saying is that somebody should ask the Gazans if they could have a better life of peace and prosperity somewhere else, not under the stranglehold of Hamas,
right, and if they say
which is a repressive Islamic regime that throws gay people off the roof, that marries off 12-year-old girls.
If they say
who wants to live like that?
If they say
would you like to live like that?
If they say no, then what? Would you forcibly displace them illegally? Because that would be ethnic cleansing.
Well, first of all, we have a big problem in the Gaza Strip, which is that Hamas is still on its feet. Would you want Hamas to be ruled by genocidal
Can you answer the question? I'm asking you, do you believe...
I'm asking you a question. What are the alternatives?
No, you're not here to ask me questions. You're here to answer them. Would you forcibly remove Palestinians? There is a suggestion. It's not clear from what Trump has said that he means forcibly or not. But do you believe in forcibly removing the Palestinians?
I don't believe in forcibly removing anyone. What I do believe is in getting rid of terrorists. Yes, I do.
So you would forcibly remove people you designate as terrorists, but not civilians?
Not I designate. People that are involved in Hamas, that are card-carrying members of Hamas, people that believe in a charter of killing Jews. Yeah. Yes, why not? Would you want these people in your country?
Do you see any reason why people would want to leave their homeland? Do you understand the attachment? Yes. To the concept of a homeland?
Of course I do. Of course I do. But ultimately, these people's homeland has been taken over by jihadi terrorists. So would you rather live under American control, or would you rather live under the Islamic Republic of Iran's proxy?
Well,
if you were a regular family, if Trump is talking about it.
Well, that's not the actual choice. I mean, just because Trump says it, that's not the actual choice.
So what's the choice? Staying under a genocidal terrorist regime?
No, there are all sorts of other choices that if you ask the Palestinian people and give them a say, which they currently don't have, then they
had
may
a say
choose.
in 2005, and they voted for Hamas, and then Hamas never had an election again. So it's not like we haven't tried. We left the Gaza Strip in 2005. Everybody's laughing about Trump's comment about the Riviera. That's what the Palestinians could have turned Gaza into. They had that moment to show the world that they could create the pilot for a Palestinian state. And what did they create?
But what if somebody came along and said, well, why don't you leave? What if Vladimir Putin said, well, we'll build some towns for the Israelis in Russia and let the Gazans live in peace? I mean, how would you react to that?
That's very interesting that you go back to that, because you've really hit the core of the problem. And the core of the problem is not that there isn't a Palestinian state. The core of the problem here is that there's a Jewish state, which the Palestinian leadership and some of our neighbors have never quite accepted. We're not going to go back 76 years and dismantle the Jewish state.
So you don't like that idea?
Well, what I don't like is the idea of people who don't want to live side by side with us. If they did, and we've offered it to them 5 times, then there would be no problem at all, no war, and there wouldn't have been a massacre on October 7th.
OK, for Hassan Nahum, thank you very much indeed for joining us.